Hey Richard, how are you?
Testing 1, 2. This is just for YouTube. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Morning, Councillor Kitts.
Good morning. How are you?
Bad. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
Good morning, Councillor Kitts.
Good morning, Councillor Elshantiri. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Chair Elshantiri.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm still brushing up on all my legislative
Oh, that's
procedures.
So, Mark, we need Councillor Moffat to have quorum. Is that correct? You're on mute.
Yeah, and he's going to end up doing the budget motion if Councillor Gower's not back yet too, so.
Okay. Okay, then.
Councillor Moffat's with us now, Chair, so.
Good morning, everyone. I see Councillor Moffitt join us, and I believe Councillor Gower and Councillor Meehan will join us shortly. Both indicate they are busy for the first half an hour. So folks, this particular meeting will be hosted in Zoom, particularly by joining the meeting by calling a toll-free telephone number using Zoom. So for my colleague, I don't have to tell them we've been on Zoom for a long time now. If you need to speak, you can use the hand in the participant, or you can just wave at me. So we are a small group. Hopefully you can see everyone on the screen. First of all, welcome to our meeting for December 3rd, 2020. There's a statement I'd like to read. So this is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendment listed as item 3 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendment are adopted may appeal the matter to the local planning appeal tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the local planning appeal tribunal if council does not adopt the amendment within 90 days of receipt of the applications for zoning and 120 days for the official plan amendment. To submit written comment on these amendments prior to their consideration by the City Council on November 25th, please email or call the committee or council coordinator. So we like to call on Mr. Desjardins. Do we need to call for?
I'll do a roll call.
Roll call, please.
Councillor Kitts.
Here.
Councillor DeRuse.
Here.
Councillor Moffat.
Here.
And Councillor Meehan will be late. Councillor Gower as well. And Chair El Shantiri.
Present. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Desjardins.
Yep, quorum.
Thank you, sir. Again, declaration of interest. See none. Confirmation of minute 18 meeting of 5th November 2020 of the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. Okay. Thank you very much. So item number one, we have an update change on the Conservation Authority, and I would, with the will of the committee, I would like to do item 2, which is the draft operating and capital budget for Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, before we do item number 1. So this way we can release our staff from finance. As you all know, Iraq budget is small because most of our item listed with the Transportation Committee. So with the wish of the committee, we can go to item 2 before we go item. I see thumbs up from my colleague. Thank you. So we'll hold item 1 and we'll hold item 2. Item 3 is a zoning bylaw amendment 2415 Richard Side Road in West Carlton, Mars. Item 1, that the Agricultural Affairs Committee recommend council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 for 2415 Richardson Side Road for the purpose of rezoning the land from rural countryside zone RU to rural countryside zone rural exception, and to add a warehouse as permitted use as a detail in document 2. And item number 2, that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee approve the consultation detail section of this report be included as a part of brief explanation. To my knowledge, there's only one speaker, and I think the speaker in support of this application, Mark, is that correct? And this item, as you folks, I think, who know the area, they would know, is known in our community as the CBC building. And I have to tell you, it was a real pleasure dealing with these folks on what they're doing and their professionalism in their application. So we have no speaker against this item, if with the will of the committee, and if it's okay with the individual who's on the call to carry this item. Can we carry this item?
Carried.
Okay.
Carried.
Go ahead. I didn't get the name, Mark, of the gentleman speaking on this item, so we can thank him.
It's Mark Rivet, and he is on from JL Richards.
Mark, you're okay? We carry this item, correct?
Correct. Oh,
Thank you very much, Mark, for joining us today.
thank you. Have a good day.
Item number 4 is a new zoning bylaw proposed work plan. And that's the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve. 1, the work plan for a new comprehensive zoning bylaw replacing bylaw 2008-250 with the final draft of the new zoning bylaw to be before council for consideration for Q4 2024. 2, that a major changes, big moves, and quick hits report be submitted following adoption of the new official plan in Q4 2021 that will outline staff finding and recommendations on the form and structure of proposed new comprehensive zoning bylaw. B, describe the general nature and scope of changes to the zoning regime that will need incorporated onto the new zoning bylaw to meet the needs of the council approved growth management plan and a new official plan policy direction. C, lay out the course of work and budget requirements for subsequent phases of the new comprehensive zoning bylaw project, including any necessary amendment to the work plan. D, identify any opportunities for amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 quick hits that may particularly be undertaken in the immediate or short term to better implement critical official plan direction while the full comprehensive zoning bylaw has been developed, including amendment to respond to a development pressure or major policy initiative such as zoning. And 3, establishment of a council-sponsored group to support and advocate for the new zoning bylaw project as described in this report. 4, that the Joint Committee of Planning Committee and Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee be delegated the authority to hold any statutory public meeting required for consideration leading to the enhancement of the comprehensive zoning bylaw. So we have staff, Dave Wise and Carol Reddy and Andrea, and I believe Steve Willis said was going to join us. I'm not sure if my colleague have any question on this. We need to hold it. I just read it just because for the people on the YouTube. Is any questions? Should we hold this item?
Just one quick question I have.
Go ahead.
So in terms of obviously pertinence to this term of council, I know this stems a lot from our previous OP discussions and the need to move quickly with the comprehensive zoning bylaw to ensure that we can implement our growth projections and certainly our intensification targets. So just for the terms of this report on the quick hits part, that's really going to pertain mostly to things outside of the purview of Agricultural Affairs Committee, correct? It would generally be some tools to ensure that we can get to that 60% intensification target that we've set. So mostly within the urban area, what I would assume on the big moves and quick hits aspect.
Mr. Chair, the likelihood is that yes, it will be predominantly focused on implementing the growth management strategy and anything that we need to do in the short term in order to achieve those goals. We may be considering some smaller, more housekeeping updates that might be necessary to really clear the decks as we go forward to this very significant project. So we might be making some changes to the rural area and to some of the villages and whatnot as we go forward, but those would be less substantive at this time. Those would be more, again, along the lines of making sure that we are getting things ready for the big work to come later in the course of the project.
So the final report projected, out 6 years from now, really is the report that would more likely have an impact on rural Ottawa than that initial Q4 2021 report, correct?
Well, the planned report, the planned bylaw will be accomplished within 3 years after the passage of the official plan. So hopefully we'll be able to get it done sooner than 6. We're looking for a little bit of a faster time frame than that. But yes, that's when you would see the more substantive meat that might apply to ARAC at this time.
Okay, thanks. I'm not sure why I saw this. I thought I saw the 6th year somewhere in the report. I thought I saw 2026 written somewhere in the report. Anyways, that's good. Thanks, David.
And Mr. Wise, since you're still on the call, so basically also that clean up some of the small items of left behind in zoning bylaw, if I understand correctly, because as we went through it not too long ago in North Gore, they changed the zone. But anyway, so basically this is to tie up before the official plan or to go hand in hand with the official plan. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. There's a number of exceptions that still need to be dealt with. There are some boundary changes. There's a number of other items that are relating back to OPA 115, 180 that still need to be resolved. And we're still going to keep moving forward with those pieces so we can make sure that there's, again, as clean a slate as possible before we move forward.
And will you be looking at that? I mean, Councillor Chantieri rightly brought up the North Gore example where the North Gore's secondary plan was not aligned with the zoning and never, unfortunately, was implemented into zoning. Would we make sure that we're looking at those types of situations, even though they aren't predominantly part of this OP, but they're previous OP decisions that were then just missed on the zoning bylaw?
Just move it over to Carol.
Yep.
Chair, Councillor Moffat, yes, we will be looking at pressing issues in villages that need to be looked after. Certainly, we're not going to let those sit during the time that we're working on the comprehensive zoning bylaw.
Good.
Yeah.
So there's certainly a commitment to do that for sure.
Okay, that was certainly the crux of the issue in North Gore, unfortunately, was just that alignment of policy to zoning. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. If there's no other question from my colleague on this item, can we carry this item? Okay.
Hey.
I see Councillor Meehan made it earlier than she thought. Welcome, Councillor. Item number 5, amendment to the permanent sign on private property bylaw 2016-326. The item is that the Agricultural Affairs Committee recommends Council 1, approve amendment to the permanent signs on private property bylaw 2016-326 as detailed in document 1, and 2, delegate authorities to the chief building official and legal services to finalize and make minor changes to the form of the amendment to the bylaw in document 1 to give effect to the intent of council. So folks, this item in front of us, A, to review the bylaw on a private property, but also if you remember a few months ago, I brought the temporary exemption for signage in a rural area, and then we thought maybe it's time to revisit the signage bylaw on a private property. We have on the call with us Richard Ash this morning. If any of my colleagues have any question about this permanent sign bylaw, or can we carry this item?
Just a comment, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Councilor.
I just want to thank you and thank staff. I know that you every once in a while we bring amendment and we bring temporary amendment and we drag in rural areas, specifically our resident, and we're always arguing over signs. So I'm glad that you addressed this issue and you brought this bylaw to address all these little gaps. So thank you, and thank staff for the work that they've done on that file. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Giroux. Richard, did we miss anything? Richard Ash on the call. Did we miss anything from?
No, I think you've covered it, Chair.
And this, we're hoping the changes will serve the need for the rural area when we have signage in a major road collector like 80 kilometer, whether in any area, the size of the sign will be able to be bigger now, if to put in that perspective.
Correct. Yeah, much bigger. I mean, there was an anomaly there on the to recognize the rural environment, and we've corrected that. And I think that we've balanced everything out there. So yeah, there's much larger signage permitted, but still understanding the character of the rural environment.
Well, I really appreciate it. I appreciate staff's work on this, and I want to thank you, Richard, for joining us this morning. And I don't see any objection to carry this item. So with this item carried. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we go to item 2, the draft operating and capital budget for Agricultural Rural Affairs Committee. This way we can have this item presentation, and then we'll go to item 1, which is, I presume, is going to take more time. So
Chair,
that we'll leave it to. Okay, sorry, Mark, did I miss something?
there is the extra item too. I don't know if you just want to wait till the end on that, or?
Yeah, I thought we'll wait to the end for the other stuff.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. James, you're going to do the draft operating capital budget for Agricultural Affairs Committee, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Chair El-Shantiri and members of the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. My name is Doug James, and I am the Acting Director of Planning Services. And I'm here today, I'm pleased to be here today to actually help deliver the 2021 Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee budget. Also presenting with me today, and actually probably doing most of the talking, will be Jen Nielsen, who is the Acting Manager of Asset Management. Also on the call today, we have Karina Dukos from Infrastructure Services. We have Don Herweyer and Geraldine Wildman from Economic Development and Long Range Planning. I see we have Wendy Stephenson who is the City Treasurer, who's here on behalf of Finance. And if there's any questions, I guess, with respect to the numbers, she's probably the best person to talk to. We should have Luc Gagné from Public Works, Dan Chenier from Recreation, Cultural and Facility Services. Adam Brown is here as well, who's the manager of the rural branch here in Development Review. And I believe we also have Steve Willis on the line. All here, as I mentioned, will be happy to answer any questions that do come up. Next slide, please. The next slide before us here is the agenda. This morning, as of course, we will be reviewing the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee operating and capital budgets. And as mentioned here on this slide, there's an overview presentation, which we are doing now. We have public delegations, questions to staff, We also have a review of the budgets and the budget recommendation to council, which of course the budget has been tabled and will be discussed, debated by council next week. Next slide, please. This next slide shows us the operating budget summary. The budget areas include development services. They're in the two rows on starting from the left. Development review services in the rural. Also, we have the Rural Affairs Office. The Development Review Rural proposed 2021 budget, as you can see there, is approximately, and those are in millions of dollars, $1.91930 million. The Rural Affairs Office, the budget proposed for next year is approximately $1,127,000. And when you add those two together, you get the total budget, which is $3,057,000. Next slide, please. The budget includes an adjustment of things that you'll see within the budget, includes an adjustment for potential cost of living increases, as well as increments and benefit adjustments. So those are part of the things that will be discussed today. But the next slide, please. And I would like, with the next slide, we're going to talk about the capital budget. So I'd like to turn it over to Jen, who will speak about the next that issue within the capital, within the overall budget. Jen?
Right. Good morning. So the proposed 2021 capital budget for renewal of city assets is approximately $2.35 million. Next slide, please. In order to accomplish the initiatives identified in the capital budget, the draft 2021 budget would draw $2.35 million from the Capital Reserve Fund. Next slide, please. So the City of Ottawa maintains nearly $50 billion in existing infrastructure assets. All of Ottawa's infrastructure assets are safe. We apply a risk-based approach and to ensure that priority is given to critical infrastructure. Roads, especially in the rural area, remain a high priority for Ottawa residents. The city is committed to maintaining roads based on industry standards. To manage the extensive road network, we apply recognized industry best practices, and we're always looking for ways to improve how roads are built and renewed. Although much of this funding falls under the purview of other committees, Draft Budget 2021 invests approximately $41.6 million to upgrade rural infrastructure, including approximately $9.4 million to replace and repair rural culverts, an additional $9.4 million for bridge structures, approximately $3.7 million for buildings and parks, including accessibility, and approximately $16.7 million for resurfacing, road preservation, and sidewalk renewal. Next slide, please. So here are some highlights of the rural road upgrades which are planned for 2021. So we have approximately $2 million to upgrade and install new guide rails. We also have $400,000 to upgrade rural roads, including $360,000 to upgrade Granger Park Road near Upper Dwyer Hill Road, and $40,000 to upgrade the gravel road on Alfalfa Street near Boyd Road. From a resurfacing perspective, we're investing approximately $16.7 million to resurface roads specifically in the rural areas. Here are some highlights of some of the roads that we'll be doing this year. So we have Bank Street between Snake Island Road, Victoria Street, and Mitch Owens Road. River Road between Flag Station and Mitch Owens. Thomas A. Dolan Parkway between Dunrobin and 6th Line Roads. Bankfield Road between 380 meters east of 1st Line Road and Rideau Valley Drive. Colonial Road between Monseigneur Denis Court to Canaan Road. Next slide, please. We also have a number of structures that are being done in the rural areas, and they're either being designed or constructed within our budget envelopes. So we have approximately $9.4 million to rehabilitate structures, so bridges or bridge culverts. Some highlights include the 2nd Line Road Bridge, construction of Dalmac Road Bridge, construction of the Quesnel Bridge on Russell Road over Bear Brook Creek, construction of Milton Road Bridge over Bear Brook Creek, and designing the Fluellen Road Bridge. And lastly, under the purview of the Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Wastewater Management Committee, $500,000 of municipal drainage works was identified. So it's for anticipated capital works under the Provincial Drainage Act. These are legislative requirements including petitions for drainage improvements, changes that come through the year, and it is a largely cost recoverable item. And with that, we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Jen and James, for your presentation. I'm gonna check the hand. I don't see any question from my colleagues to staff about the budget. Jen, perhaps you mentioned some of our budget is with other budgets of the city. Should we point that out, that like how much of our budget will be part of the transportation budget as well?
Yes, so I can certainly do that. So under TRC, so the Transportation Committee, we have the resurfacing, preservation, and sidewalk renewal for $16.7 million. And we also have the transportation structures, which is $9.4 million.
Okay.
Buildings and parks is spread over multiple committees because it depends on what the use of the facility is. And the total there is $3.7 million. And lastly, structures rate. So the culverts design and construction, I believe, falls under the Standing Committee for Environmental Protection that Chair Moffat leads. And that's in the order of $9.4 million. So the total across the other committees is $39.2 million.
Thank you, Jen. To my knowledge, Mr. Desjardins, we don't have public speaking on the budget. Is that correct?
That's correct. There are no delegations.
No delegation. So we'll go to Councillor Moffat, who's going to read the budget motion for us. Councillor Moffat, do you have the motion, or do you need to put on the screen, or?
Up on the screen. So it's that the Agricultural Affairs Committee recommend that Council, sitting as Committee of the Whole, approve the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee 2021 draft operating budget and capital budget as follows. So I'm not sure if you now want to go through 1, 2, 3, or I'll read them and then you just ask for carried.
Okay, so on the motion, Kerry.
So no, so okay, so
we got to go one by yes.
Yeah, so I'll read one and then you ask. So 1,
okay.
Development Review Process Rural Operating Resource Requirement, page 2.
Carry.
Okay.
2, Rural Affairs Office as follows. 1, User Fees, page 5. 2, Operating Resource Requirement, page 4.
Carry.
And on 3, that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee Capital Program, page 6, individual projects listed, pages 13 to 15.
Okay.
Perfect.
On the item itself, item number 2, the draft budget, operating capital budget, Agricultural Affairs Committee is the item carry.
Carry.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councilor Moffat. And we'll go to item number 1. And item number 1 is update and proposed changes to the Conservation Authorities Act contained in Bill 229, Project Support and Recover from COVID-19 Act. As you folks know, most of us around this table, I think, and this meeting are involved in our local conservation authorities. So the Vice Chair, myself on MBCA, Councillor Moffat, who else with you on Rideau Valley as a councillor?
Ian, Councillor Moffat and I.
Okay, and also South Nation, we have Councillor Kitts, Councillor Deroux, and Councillor Lulaf. So you can see our participation and our interest in this item. So I'm going to turn it to Garrett, our legal service, to lead us in the presentation. Turn it to you, Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Desjardins, are you able to pull up the, perfect, I see it's coming up. Great. So as you said, Mr. Chair, this presentation concerns Bill 229 and just the aspects related to the Conservation Authorities Act contained in that bill. Next slide, please. So the Bill 229 contains 99 amendments, 99 different statutes. So like I said, we're just focusing on Conservation Authorities Act for the purposes of this presentation. This is summarizing a fairly detailed amendment. So all the details are contained in our staff report, which is listed on the screen and is linked to in this presentation, which I can distribute after the presentation. The bill is putting into force amendments which started in 2017, were amended under the current government in 2019, and are further amended this year in Bill 2229. So there's a lot of legislative history here, and it's a several fairly detailed amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act, which collectively add up to quite significant amendments. Next slide, please. I've summarized the types of changes here just for ease of reference. I would categorize them as 5 major types. First, there are changes to who may sit on the Conservation Authority boards and the length of their term. Secondly, there are changes to the types of services authorities are required or permitted to provide, with new mandatory services and additional requirements for public disclosure for agreements with municipalities. Thirdly, there's more provincial power to regulate authorities' budgets, though the specifics of those powers or the regulations that will be enacted under those powers are not yet known. Fourthly, there are restrictions on authorities' ability to appeal Planning Act decisions and their ability to acquire land through expropriation. And finally, fifthly, changes to not yet proclaimed enforcement tools by removing the power to issue stop work orders. So we're going to drill down into these in a little bit more detail, but that's the overview of what's contained in this bill. Next slide, please. The most significant changes immediately will be the changes to board composition. As the members of this committee are probably already aware from the report to council, municipalities will be required to only appoint municipal councillors to conservation authority boards. This is a change from the current practice, which you're all aware of, that private members are permitted to be appointed and in fact are in Ottawa. Next slide, please. This is just summarizing what our current boards are composed of. And I might have missed Councillor Luloff. I think you mentioned, Mr. Chair, that South Nation was Conservation Authority was Councillors Kitts, Derues, and Luloff. But in any event, we have at least 15 seats appointed by Ottawa members, by Ottawa, and we would need to fill those seats with councillors. Or alternatively, we'd have to amend our memoranda of understanding in each case with the other participating municipalities to permit a lesser number of members per municipality. Next slide, please. So in addition to those changes, there will also be changes which would allow the minister to appoint a representative of the agricultural sector to a conservation authority board. We don't have details yet about any other qualifications that might be required for this person, or any other details about how that would be done or in which circumstances. Additionally, the position of chair and vice chair is proposed to be limited to a 1-year term. Additionally, a member will not be able to serve as chair or vice chair for more than 2 consecutive years. Next slide, please. The next group of changes relates to service provision by conservation authorities. The current act provides a mechanism by which the minister can prescribe mandatory services that are required to be provided by the conservation authorities, but it doesn't include a list of those specific mandatory services. Bill 229 would specify a list, while also allowing the minister to continue to add to that list by prescribing additional services. The list proposed are highlighted on this slide, but essentially it relates to three main service types, which are programs and services related to the risk of natural hazards, those related to conservation and management of lands controlled by the authority, and then programs related to source protection under the Clean Water Act, and then additionally anything else that might be prescribed. New slide. All right, next slide, please. Bill 229 also continues to permit authorities to provide programs and services pursuant to an agreement or memorandum of understanding between the Conservation Authority and the municipality. The changes in Bill 229 require these agreements to be made public, which was a change that was previously proposed in the other not yet enforced legislation. The minister is also given more power to enact regulations to limit the types of services that can be contained in these memoranda of understanding. We currently don't have a proposal from the ministry as to what types of limits they may choose to impose. Additionally, Bill 229 retains the power for conservation authorities to enact or to provide other services. The language around this provision has been changed, though, so that those services must further the objectives of the Act. So it's unclear if that would limit the current authority of the authorities to provide services other than those that are set out as mandatory services or those that are set out in an agreement with a municipality. That would be something that might have to be considered in the future. Next slide, please. So this slide relates to changes that have been made to Conservation Budget Authority. Bill 229, in brief, essentially allows the minister to enact further legislation or regulations with respect to budgets. It essentially gives more control to the ministry over aspects of Conservation Authority budgets. They would have to enact those through a regulation, and that regulation has not been proposed. Next slide, please. The Bill 229 proposes as well to remove conservation authorities as a public body for the purposes of the Planning Act. That has the effect that conservation authorities will no longer be able to appeal any Planning Act decisions, such as a zoning bylaw amendment or official plan amendment, in that capacity as a public body. Conservation authorities would still be able to appeal decisions that are related to rezoning or other planning decisions of the land that they actually own. They're not appealing in a public body capacity. In that case, they're appealing as a landowner. Appeals from refusal of applications for conservation authority permission for development under Section 28 would now go to the local planning appeal tribunal. Previously, these were to be heard by the Mining and Lands Tribunal. The Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks would also be permitted to order a conservation authority to issue or not issue a Section 28 permit. And the minister may also issue a permit directly with or without conditions. And these would not be subject to a hearing or an appeal. Next slide, please. The authority was proposed to have a variety of new enforcement mechanisms under previous legislation, which has not yet been proclaimed into force. Bill 229 would remove the proposed stop work order power from conservation authorities. So again, this is not a power that conservation authorities currently have. It was a power that was proposed to be given to conservation authorities, which is now proposed to be taken away. So that's the confusion there is due to all the conflicting amendments that have not been proclaimed into force. So this is a power that would have allowed conservation authorities to issue an order to stop actions which were contrary to the Conservation Authorities Act. They do have other enforcement powers, such as the right to enter onto land without a warrant, search without a warrant, or issue an offense or start an offense proceeding for contravening the act, issue an order for rehabilitation of land. So this is just one of those powers that's been removed. Additionally, conservation authorities had the power, or currently have the power, to expropriate land, which means taking land without permission but with compensation to the former owner. They would no longer have that authority under the Bill 229 proposed amendments. Next slide, please. This bill has not yet been enacted. The first reading was on November 5th. It was referred to Standing Committee and is currently with Standing Committee. And we're expecting that royal assent, barring any major changes at Standing Committee or any other political changes, would happen next week, December 7th through 11th. Once passed, the timeline for implementation of the Conservation Authority Act amendments has not been formally announced. We're advised by conservation authorities that the province has indicated that the program changes would likely be implemented in 2022 budgets, which means we could expect to see a requirement to renegotiate any agreements with municipalities in summer of 2021 if these changes go ahead next week as they're expected to. Next slide, please. As I alluded to before, Council approved comments to the Minister on November 25th. The city's letter focused on the impact of removing the private members from the Conservation Authority boards and urged the province to delay enactment of all of the amendments in order to permit further consultation with conservation authorities and with municipalities. Next slide, please. So I can have this slide deck distributed to all the committee members after the presentation. This just contains some references for your further reading should you like to refer to it. I believe my colleague Amy McPherson is on the line as well to speak to additional staff comments on these changes. So subject to any questions, I'll pass the mic off to her.
Chair, if I may, for one moment before we go to staff
Certainly.
questions, I just want to do a quick recap that we rushed the most urgent comments from the city to the province, which is on the board composition, which would basically have almost every member of council having to sit on the board of a conservation authority, and it's entirely impractical in Ottawa's context. We did rush those out. The mayor did send that letter that has gone. Certainly we have concerns about the remainder of the legislation. But we're being, I think, pretty practical about the fact that we strongly believe that province is on a track to adopt the legislation as they have proposed, and we hope they will listen to the most urgent, very pointed question we ask them. So, just want to put a practical lens on this. It's not that we didn't have other concerns, but we focused on the ones that had the most severe impact.
Before we go to questions, Steve, maybe you can. Out of the 34 or maybe 35 conservation authority we have in the province, I think our city or maybe handful of city will have a challenge sending that many councillors to the conservation authority, where other small municipality, I don't think they will have similar challenge. Is that fair to say?
The situation is quite different in different parts of the province. Not all of the province is covered by a conservation authority. That's first and foremost. And some conservation authorities cover a very, very large territory. If you look at like Lake Simcoe region, they have a lot of municipalities. And so their board is composed by one from here, one from there. So it's no big issue. Ottawa is really unique in that we represent the majority of the three watersheds in terms of land area. And so we have a very high representation in that situation. And if you take off the option for other conservation authority board members, it forces councillors to do it. So we think the Ottawa situation is different, but I would imagine even in the Toronto Region Conservation Authority, they would have very much the same issue, is finding enough councillors to volunteer to want to do this. And I think many of the conservation authority boards have had some pretty strong people from the outside who really want to be part of this and who have actually made some significant contributions. So we hope the province will listen to us. And as I said, it's this legislation is going fast though.
Okay, so we'll go to my colleague if they have any question. I see Councillor Kitts have her hands up. I hope I'm going in that order. Councillor Kitts.
Just had a quick clarification comment. I believe that in regards to Councillor Luloff being on South Nation, I believe that I replaced him when I was elected. I think he was appointed when Councillor Blais vacated the seat and I replaced him. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay. That's good, thank you. Councillor Derouz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I'm not gonna, we saw the presentation and then we kind of understood some of the changes that will impact Conservation Authority, but I also want to highlight, I agree with you because the budget of some of the conservation, if I look at South Nation, 80% of the budget that goes into South Nation is coming from the city of Ottawa. And is we barely be able to have 2 councillors to represent, to be on that table if we don't have the other public member that we appoint. Because I mean, Councillor Kit sits on CPS and it interfered with her committee. I was in the same position last term, and I know I am the chair of South Nation this year. So it is very difficult to be able to make good decision for the taxpayer of the city of Ottawa on that table if we won't be able to allow to have some public representation on that table. So I know I also have on our, we have our general manager from South Nation, Angela Coleman, with us. She probably want to speak a little bit later if you allow her to just highlight a little bit what it's really the impact. And because she also worked with Conservation Authority Ontario, not only the local one, in conjunction with Mississippi and of course with Rideau. So I want to thank her for being here this morning, and I'm thanking you, Mr. Chair, for bringing these issue forward and addressing on the motion to the minister to address these problems in the city of Ottawa, because like you said, it's very unique, and it's we have a loss of representation on the 3 CAs that we represent in the city of Ottawa.
Okay, well, before we go to Angela, there's a question from Councillor Gower, Mr. Vice Chair. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's not a question, but a comment. I do want to thank Garrett and Steve and the rest of the staff for putting this together. I sit on the board of the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority. I'm serving as vice chair right now. So like Councillor Derouz and Councillor El-Shantiri, you all know how demanding these boards are. There's a tremendous amount of uncertainty right now, and with all of the changes happening from the province. To me, it's actually not unlike what we've seen with some of the changes that the province is making to the healthcare system. These conservation authorities are responsible for managing things like water quality and flooding infrastructure, flood infrastructure. And I think the last thing we want to see is less of an ability to have proper oversight and advice from yes, elected officials, but also the citizen members. The time demand is one thing that's concerning for me in terms of the proposed changes to membership, but taking away that level of expertise that the public members bring would be a real detriment to the ability of these conservation authorities to function properly. So I want to thank staff for their contributions and just state on the record how important these groups are overall to the health and safety of residents. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair. It's well said, quite honestly. I remember the first year I was appointed to the Conservation Authority in 2003, and the first meeting I attended, and the chair of the time said to me, "Oh, we have a tendency from Ottawa now 100%. I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Well, you've been here first meeting. We never saw your predecessor before." So just been, appointed there, it is important to us. And we saw the value Conservation Authority bring to us, especially someone like myself who've been through 2 major floods in my community. And also we go through, the floods other than just those major floods. So they do a great job in our community. And I want to touch something Steve mentioned. There's a member of the community or community members who are really passionate about being on the Conservation Authority. They have the experience, they have the environmental background, they have some water engineer, like the woman who chaired Mississippi Valley Conservation. She's an environmental engineer by trade, and she volunteered her time to be there. So I'm not sure. Anyway, obviously the politics is a different game, but we did what we can as a municipality. We submit our letter through our general manager on November 25th, and I hope I'm sure other municipalities, they did the same. Maybe we can hear from Angela, because I believe Angela, she worked with also on her job, South Nation Executive Director. She also worked with the Ontario Conservation Authority. So she might want to tell us about how her colleagues across the province are handling this situation. Angela?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name is Angela Coleman. I'm the General Manager, Secretary Treasurer of South Nation Conservation Authority. As members have mentioned, we've enjoyed the really excellent working relationship with the City of Ottawa, and that's been hugely important for a number of environmental, ecological, as well as benefits for the community at large. I think the staff did an excellent job covering the points in the presentation. I think Garrett's presentation is very similar to the presentation I've given out there. As you know, this matter was referred to standing committee at the provincial level, and that ended on yesterday, actually. So the deadline for submissions was yesterday as well. I know that Conservation Ontario did a very thorough presentation, and we were very fortunate to have received very positive submissions and support that are similar to the concerns that have been identified at many municipal levels. So as you know, and as received with this presentation, AMO provided a very good summary. So the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, I'm mindful that we are at ARAC, and Ontario Federation of Agriculture came out with an excellent piece on this, as did the Provincial Planners Association, the OPPI, and just a number of resolutions, as well as one from the big city mayors. The thrust of what people are asking for, if something less than full revocation of this Schedule 6 of the budget schedule, is simply that if it's not revoked entirely, that a number of key comments and consideration be considered on the move forward basis. And, you know, the crux of those are three things we talked about, but what they lead into is what we hope will not be the potential for delays as we wait for and hear different types of interventions from the province. So we're hoping to not have those types of delays in a time where, as you know, development approvals and so forth are very, very busy in all watersheds that cover the City of Ottawa. We want to know that the municipalities' concerns are heard, and that there's not unintended consequences really of what's being proposed in this bill. And we think that there's some of the partner organizations, as well as the city, have highlighted some good, potentially unintended consequences. And then, of course, there remains a bucket category of public safety concerns. We all know that the Ottawa River, and on our watershed, the St. Lawrence River as well, we are experiencing unprecedented flows, and that's true across the Great Lakes as well. And we really need to know that the decisions that affect public safety and property are made in a way that are going to be protective of the citizens and as well as the economic interests of our towns and cities across the province. So I really do want to thank the opportunity to attend at ARAC, and I'm happy to answer any other specific questions. And I can also provide a quick verification that yes, in fact, Councillor Luloff was replaced by Councillor Kitts when she was able to join us. So thank you for that, and thank you for, again, the opportunity, as well as the work of staff at the city to make all of these presentations come together in a quick and efficient manner.
Thank you very much, Angela, and thank you for your involvement as well. Any question from my colleague to Ms. Coleman? See none. Thank you very much, Angela, for attending our meeting today. And on the item, we just need to receive that. Is that correct, Mark? The presentation?
Correct, Chair.
All right. So can we receive the item?
Received.
Thank you. So we do have additional item. I need your support to waive the rule because if timely is the motion is by Councillor Moffat, and that's the designation of a property on 6776 Rothburn Road. But before I turn it over to Councillor Moffat, be it resolved that the following item be added to the agenda of December 3rd, 2020 meeting of Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee pursuant to procedural bylaw subsection 89(3) as the matter needed to be considered by the council in a timely manner, and there is only one more council meeting in 2020. So can we waive the rule procedure to receive this item? I see yes from, okay, so I'll turn it to Councillor Moffat. Councillor Moffat.
Thank you very much. Members of the committee might remember an item that we dealt with not long ago on the Goulburn Wetland Complex. And through that, we made some changes to what the report was recommending. And as a result, there was a property that got caught in that was in the middle of a site plan control application. So we would have addressed an issue through that approval, which would have been a deletion of a wetland boundary. So that didn't happen. So now we just have this kind of got caught in, and this motion helps to address that and allows the development to proceed. So I'll just read it out. So whereas the province of Ontario has approved changes to the boundary of the provincial significant Goulburn wetland complex on the property at 6776 Rothburn Road, and whereas the area is designated as significant wetland at 6776 Rothburn Road on official plan Schedule A are no longer consistent with the boundaries of the provincially significant wetland, and whereas the draft official plan released November 20th, 2020 seeks to make the significant wetland designation consistent with the boundaries of the provincially significant wetland complex, whereas the owner of 6776 Rothburn Road, the city, the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority mapped and agreed upon the new wetland boundary on the property, with the city and the MVCA agreeing to consider a crossing of the wetland at a point where the wetland narrowed to the width of the Hazeldean municipal drain, and whereas the new wetland boundary with the proposed crossing would increase the developable area of the property, and therefore be it resolved that the Agricultural Rural Affairs Committee recommend that council supports the redesignation by the local planning appeal tribunal, LPAT, of those areas of property at 6776 Rothburn Road no longer identified by the province as provincially significant wetland from significant wetland to general rural area, as well as the proposed crossing, and 2, the rezoning by the LPAT of those areas of the property at 6776 Rothburn Road no longer identified by the province as provincially significant wetland as RG1, as well as the proposed crossing.
Thank you, Councillor Moffat. And any question on the motion from Councillor Moffat? Well, can we carry the motion? Motion carried. Thank you very much. And thank you, Councillor Moffat, for bringing this up to us. So we have no in-camera items. Inquiries? I see none. Other business? None. So our next meeting is going to be February 4th, 2021. Before we adjourn, I would like to wish you, our staff, the residents who's listening to us, and to you and your family, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to all of you. And hopefully, I know 2020 was a rough year on all of us, so hopefully 2021 will be a brighter year to all of you and your family. So with that, adjournment. So we're adjourned, and have a great holiday, folks. And obviously, we'll see you tomorrow in another meeting. Take care.
Thank you.
Did we miss anything, Mark, or everything?
Got everything.
Thank you. I should have asked you that before we adjourned. But
that's all right.